and if as I say your name, if you just wave and see yourself on TV, Rashik, Kai, Quaid, and Grayson. And they're sixth graders at J. Scheidler Elementary and Auburn Elementary. So they're here today. Welcome. And Senator Argabright, I think you have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have four nice young ladies from Hartford Jaguar High School, if you'd stand up, please. And their teacher, Mr. Dandria, is joining us today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Well, we've got two hearings today on our agenda, but the proponent for House Bill 2334 is Representative Tarwater, and he's not here yet. So I think we're going to start, if it's okay, committee, with 2047 because everybody's here. So Eileen, would you like to give us an update on 2047? And this is going to seem very familiar to you.
Between here and House Insurance, I'm like perpetually in deja vu land. So House Bill 2047 is the bill that provides for the establishment of an online verification system for the verification of evidence of motor vehicle liability insurance. It's the House's version of our Senate Bill 42. As you know, the bill would create 9 sections of new law enacting the Kansas Real-Time Motor Vehicle Insurance Verification Act, and it would require the commissioner to establish an online verification system of motor vehicle liability insurance. The House Committee on Insurance amended the bill in committee to add a new section. The new section was the section that we added on the Senate floor during debate, and it states that establishing compliance with the provisions of KSA 40-3104 through the insurance verification system shall not be the primary cause for law enforcement to stop a vehicle. And the House Committee of the Whole passed the bill unanimously on February 20th. And with that, Madam Chair, I can stand for questions.
Committee, do you have any questions of Eileen? Thank you, Eileen. So our very first proponent today is going to be Mandy Rowe, who's the Chief of Staff for the Kansas Department of Insurance. Welcome, Mandy.
Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Mandy Rowe. I am the Chief of Staff of the Kansas Department of Insurance. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to testify on House Bill 2047. As Eileen indicated, this is freakishly similar to House or Senate Bill 42 that you all recently heard and passed, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today in person instead of via Zoom like our last hearing. But this bill would require insurance companies to report to the state's new verification system, which would be cross-referenced with the VIN numbers of the registered vehicles in Kansas. As I indicated previously, there are roughly 8%, we'll find out more once the system's in place, of uninsured vehicles in Kansas. And I would like to just note that in 2021 and 2022, we did a data call for the asked insurance companies what they are spending on issues or claims paid over involving uninsured motorists. Over that 2-year period of time, it was $51 million. We believe this will help reduce that number and help reduce the out-of-pocket expenses that everyday Kansans are paying because of uninsured motorists. Again, 20 states have utilized this, or roughly 20 states have utilized a form of this to help stop uninsured motorists in their states. Again, the House did not make quite as many amendments as you all did the first go round. There's a couple, I think, more technical amendments that you all made that the House did not. The department doesn't have any issue with those either. So happy to stand for questions now or later.
Thank you. Committee, do you have any questions of Mandy? Thank you. If something comes up, we know where you are, but unless you have to leave.
Eric will still be here.
Okay,
so
very good.
I'll defer my questions.
You have to go to another committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. Okay, our second proponent is Ed Klump. Ed, I see you. I see you. Would you like to say a few words about this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ed Klump, representing the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police, Kansas Sheriff's Association, Kansas Peace Officers Association. And, you know, you've heard this before with Senate Bill 42. I'm not going to go through everything I had to say about that. I'm sure you remember you passed it out of this committee. It passed the Senate 38-2. It's over in the House. We had the hearing on it yesterday. The one thing I do want to mention on this bill is the new Section 10 that the House added, having to do with making this a non-primary reason for a car stop. We have absolutely no problem with that. We can't even imagine a situation where we'd do that anyway. And this makes people feel better about the bill, and so we're perfectly happy with that. We don't care if it stays in, comes out, but we're fine with it. So I just wanted to relay that to the committee in addition to our testimony on 42, and I'll stand for questions when the time's appropriate.
Thank you. So the House bill passed unanimously on the floor, right? It did. I'm pretty sure it did, yeah.
Yep.
And 38-2 in ours, so thank you. Any questions for Ed? Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. And then our third proponent is Matt Blasingame. Matt, welcome. I don't know if we've seen you this session.
So, Chairperson Dietrich, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matt Blasingame. I'm with the Fraternal Order of Police, represent 4,200 law enforcement officers across the state of Kansas. I'm a sergeant with the Topeka Police Department, been on the department for a little over 15 years now. Work the streets, stop cars, have interactions with individuals on car stops and during traffic accidents. And 2047 would allow, that would be very helpful in the job that we're doing out there, because right now when someone gets issued an insurance policy or an insurance verification card, they can start that policy, get that card, and it's going to show that they have insurance. So when we have contact with them on the street, they can provide that card, and they quite possibly don't have insurance, but they do have a card showing that they have valid insurance. So this would allow us to identify whether they actually have insurance at that time. We did provide some written testimony. In that written testimony, I neglected to point out in that testimony that this is also another benefit to this to individuals. Sometimes people will get pulled over. They will have valid insurance, but they forgot to put their new insurance card in their vehicle, or they just don't have it, it got lost or whatever. They may receive a citation for insurance. The statute allows that if they do receive a citation when they've do have insurance, as long as they go to the court within 10 days, that citation will be dismissed. However, with this in place, this would allow us to verify it at that time, and so it doesn't inconvenience the citizen by having to go down to the court to have that citation canceled. So it would also benefit individuals that way, as well as us just being able to know that they do have valid insurance at the time. So I will stand for any questions that you guys may have at the appropriate time, but thank you.
Thank you. Questions? I think we do have one. Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So when you go down to the court to show your license, is there any court costs involved with that?
Not on an insurance citation. If you have,
I'm just wondering, we're cutting costs. I like what we're doing here. I just wonder if we're saving some money that way.
So just to verify your question, you said to show your license, but you mean the insurance, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you go down there to show your proof of insurance, it's my belief that if you did have insurance at the time and you show them that you did have insurance at the time, the ticket's dismissed and there's no court cost.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Senator Haley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this would only be interactive for Kansas-issued insurance. I mean, if there's a driver, I'm on a border county, so a Missourian that's driving, would the system be interactive with insurance other places, or they would still have to go through the mechanics physically showing what they have?
I can't speak to how the system would work for an out-of-state driver. Is that what you're saying? For
Yes,
somebody from,
or a company that,
yeah,
actually, my insurance is drawn from a Missouri company, my driver's insurance is.
So I can't speak to that. I do know that there are, the way that the system we currently have, when we run tags, it does, certain insurance companies do show up on there, and I'm not sure how that information is getting in there. So I can't answer that question. So.
Senator Haley, I think our reviser may have some information for you. Go ahead, Eileen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill applies to insurers who have vehicles in Kansas that are insured. And then the bill also does not apply to commercial vehicles.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, it does.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Sir.
Any other questions? Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just thought of another one. So you have somebody from out of state get stopped by you, and they, how would something like that work? I mean, is there any way you can verify
So the way that I can speak to the way that it works now, I don't know the details as far as how the system would be set up in the future. But the way that it works right now is if I stop somebody from Missouri and they don't have current proof of insurance, it would work just like a Kansas resident. They would be issued a citation if they can't provide that proof of insurance, and then they would have that certain time frame to get down to the court to either show current proof of insurance or to set up a court date on that citation.
And they'd have to show up to local court then. If they was
Correct.
from Illinois, they'd have to stay around Kansas to do that.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. So one of the things that the Senate did on the Senate version of this bill when it was on the floor in the Senate was actually, I guess in the name of privacy, restrict the information that would be provided through this system and make it that information to be provided would be limited to these 5 items. And my question is about the 5th item. The other 4 are, policy number, verification date. The 5th item is pretty open-ended, and so I'm wondering what is included in it and the potential for abuse for this category of information to be added later into this system that might impact protecting people's privacy that's not really needed for a traffic stop. And the category is this: any other information required by the commissioner or KDOR to operate the insurance verification system. So what other information would that be, and what, I guess it's a potential what it could be. We can't predict, but it seems pretty open-ended to me.
I don't know if I can speak to that. I know as a law enforcement officer working the street, what is helpful for me when I'm interacting with a citizen and their insurance is their.
Well, that's kind of the problem. It's meant to be just to operate the insurance verification system. So then would we be getting inputs that would expand the restriction put on there by the legislature, because the commissioner or KDOR could add in other requirements that the legislature had intended to restrict?
Senator Warren, I think that might be a Department of Insurance question. Mandy, could you respond to that perhaps?
Because they would be 2 different
Right.
purposes.
Right. So-
and I'm afraid that we're going to expand it beyond the intent.
So, if I might put words in your mouth, you normally do, you don't have that bill in front of you probably.
Correct.
But you normally have, I would think, the vehicle identification number, the name, address of the individual, policy number, verification date. So the 5th piece is what Senator Warren is talking about. And so I think the insurance department might be able to respond to that better.
Yeah, and the items that you just mentioned, Senator, are the ones that we need out on the street, yes.
Thank you. Mandy?
Thank you. I will say we pulled this language from the model law that was put forth by the IICMVA, which is the Insurance Industry Committee on Motor Vehicle Administration. I believe the purpose of this language is to account for things that, or technology that becomes available in the future so that you wouldn't have to go back in and add it. Something I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is other states, some other states use license plate readers or things like that where folks have an account with that. That account number could be included in that. For example, I know our KTAG system has changed and things like that. So I believe it is I don't want to say a catch-all, but I believe it is there for use of in the event something else changes with the technology and the systems that we now have, that people now have some other form of information that would be helpful in verifying with the system.
Well, that's part of the concern that go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Senator Warren, I was going to ask the reviser, the Senate added language to our bill to address that. This is the House's bill.
Oh, I know, and I see our,
We need to address,
I'm looking at the Senate bill, and what the Senate did is, as I have described, is the original bill said including but not limited to these things, and what the Senate did is it limited it to these things, which was, in my estimation, a good idea. But this other category seems to be open-ended. And when we're looking at things like, unelected bureaucrats changing and making laws, rules and regulations with the force and effect of law, that's kind of what category E of section 5 on page 2 of the bill is, that the commissioner, who is not an unelected bureaucrat but is an elected official, could add that in, or KDOR could add it in. This is new technology changes, and maybe we should have it come before the legislature rather than give the commissioner or KDOR this permission. So I'm thinking maybe strike subsection E to bring it back to the legislature, since this is a whole new information system that we're creating.
Eileen, did you want to weigh in on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rather than striking the language, it might be possible to work with the department before we work the bill to make an amendment to it to specify what that additional, if it's related specifically to technology and not other disclosure from the insurance companies, if they want to come up with some language that would be a little bit more specific as to what that additional information pertains to, we can fold that in, and that way the department can move forward with any sorts of requests that might be necessary without having to come back to the legislature, perhaps during the interim session, or to wait for another bill or something of that sort. I'm just putting that out there as a possible solution.
So I guess I would.
Madam Chair, we'd be happy to do that, and we can also take a look at, we'll have our legal team take a look at the statutes of those other states that have implemented this to see if they have specified in any other way as well.
And we don't have to work this bill for another week, so that gives us plenty of time. Does that work for you, Senator Warren?
I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great conversation. Senator Fagg?
This might be a question, I find this interesting with Senator Warren, when you say the Kansas Department of Revenue, would that be in the future something wrong where somebody was past due on their property taxes or income taxes, or I'm just sitting here thinking there might be some other things where the Department of Revenue's out trying to collect, and here he is, and you've got the guy. So just a thought that crossed my mind there. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Senator Gossage?
Maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but the way I read it is says to operate the insurance verification system, not that they're going to take more data from people or stop them for whatever. Am I missing something there?
No.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
I am.
Thank you. Any other questions of our proponents that are here in person? Okay, thank you. Thank you. You'll find written proponent testimony from Elizabeth Smoller, General Counsel, Kansas Association of Insurance Agents, Lieutenant Roy Wise from the Highway Patrol, and Steve Carney from the Kansas State Troopers Association. Senator Gossage.
One last minor thing. In our packets, Madam Chair, I show the supplemental note for 2046 in my folder for 2047.
Uh-oh. Apologies. We will get you the right one here shortly.
Thank you.
It's, sequential numbering, sorry. We're trying to do everything in order. Thank you. Very good. Thank you for calling that to our attention. Okay. Any other? I see no opponents. I see no neutral. So we will close the hearing on House Bill 2047. We've got a little bit of work to do, and then we will bring that back at some point before our deadline to work that bill, but with some additional information. Thank you all. Okay, now we are going to open the hearing on House Bill 2334. I see Representative Tarwater's here, but we're going to have Eileen give us the briefing on this bill. We've not heard this bill before, so it will likely take the rest of our time just because there's, I'm sure, a lot of questions, and then we have folks on WebEx that may want to also provide information. So go ahead, Eileen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2334 updates certain terms, conditions, and definitions to the current Captive Insurance Act, providing for provisional certificates of authority and also incorporated cell insurance companies and protected cell captive insurance companies. Section 1 through 10 of the bill enact the Kansas Protected Cell Captive Insurance Company Act, and the remainder of the bill amends the current Captive Insurance Act. So if you take a look at Section 1, that's the name and citation of the act. Section 2 of the bill states that one or more sponsors may form a protected cell captive insurance company. From here on out, I'm just going to call it a protective cell captive. And that the act pertains to protected cell captives. This section also stipulates that a protected cell captive insurance company must incorporate as a mutual corporation, as a nonprofit corporation, or as a limited liability company. Section 3 provides the definitions for the act. Section 4 lists the materials that must be provided to the commissioner as part of the application to become a protected cell captive. Section 5 describes the different requirements that must be satisfied in order to form a protected cell captive insurance company and the properties and requirements associated with a protective cell captive. Most importantly in that section, I just want to call out that only an incorporated cell creates a legal entity person separate from the protected cell itself. Section 6 defines who can participate in a protected cell captive, and while a wide range of entities can participate in that protected cell captive, participants are generally limited to only insuring their own risks unless granted permission by the commissioner. Section 7 describes the financial management of protected cell captives, and although cells can combine assets for investment purposes, they must be accounted for separately, and the commissioner may approve alternate methods for valuing cell assets. Section 8 requires that, except as otherwise specified, the Insurers Supervision, Rehabilitation, and Liquidation Act applies to protected cell captives. No assets of a protected cell shall be used to pay the expenses or claims other than those attributed to itself, and a protected cell captive's capital and surplus shall be available at all times to pay any expenses or claims related to that protected cell captive. Section 9 of the bill describes the legal standing and liability of protected cells within a captive insurance company, and Section 10 describes how a protected cell within a captive insurance company can be converted to another type of captive insurance entity and vice versa. Section 11 amends current law, KSA 40-4302, pertaining to the risks that a captive insurance company may insure, requirements for doing business, examination and registration fees, and certificates of authority. Amendments to this section add that a pure captive insurance company shall not insure a combination of risks of its parents and unaffiliated companies and controlled unaffiliated businesses, and provides that a pure captive insurance company may provide workers' compensation insurance, insurance in the nature of workers' compensation insurance, and the reinsurance of such policies, excess and stop loss, accident, and health insurance. This section also grants the commissioner the authority to implement a provisional certificate of authority and lowers the examination and registration fees from $10,000 to $2,500. I'm going to point out that the bill was amended in the House Committee on Insurance to make that $2,500 fee the ceiling, again, as we did in the fee bill that has passed this committee already, but we're going that $2,500 would be a ceiling, and the commissioner could set that fee all the way up to $2,500. Section 12 amends KSA 40-4304 pertaining to the capital requirements of captive insurance companies and adds that a protected cell captive shall maintain unimpaired capital and surplus of not less than $100,000. Section 13 amends KSA 40-4308 pertaining to the examination of captive insurance companies. The amendment to this section changes the frequency of examination from once every 3 years to once every 5 years. Section 14 of the bill amends KSA 40-4312 to state that no captive insurance company shall be required to join a rating organization or a policy form organization. Section 15 amends KSA 40-4314 pertaining to the taxation of captive insurance companies. The amendment to this section adds a statement that taxes provided by this section constitute all taxes collectible under the laws of the state of Kansas from any captive insurance company. Again, as I mentioned, the Senate Committee of the Whole did amend the bill to change the $2,500 fee to a fee of up to $2,500. That amendment is on page 12 of the bill in line 18. And lastly, the Committee of the Whole, House Committee of the Whole passed the bill unanimously on February 20th of this year, and I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. This is a lot of new information, and I know we don't have, I've been on this committee now for 5 years. We've never even talked about captive insurance companies. So we have a little bit of educating to do. So I think Representative Tarwater will be able to answer a lot of our questions. This is an area of expertise for him. I'm giving you a very high bar here, Representative Tarwater. So do you have any questions of Eileen right now, or can we circle back to this? Are you okay to hear the presentation and come back to Eileen with questions if you have any? Thank you, Eileen. Legal nature, of a legal nature, yes. All right. Thank you, Eileen. Representative Tarwater, welcome to committee. You're our proponent here in person. Welcome to the kindest, nicest committee you're ever going to be in front of.
Let's hope that's right. Thank you for having me today, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Ranking Member, and Committee. Appreciate you taking the time to hear this bill on captive insurance changes. We currently have some captive insurance laws that actually your insurance commissioner, your current insurance commissioner, I think championed when she was in the Senate. And not a whole lot of companies have had the opportunity to take advantage of those statutes because some of these other states are just a little bit more friendly. And just so you guys are, in the simplest form, captive insurance, it's a form of self-insurance for large companies. Large companies will usually form their own insurance company. It's filed as a real insurance company. It's regulated just like a real insurance company, but it's self-insurance. And some of the benefits of a company doing that, I've listed out in my testimony, my written testimony, and you know, the number one issue is cost savings. Currently, as you probably hear from your constituents and you see around the country, there are insurance companies are raising rates at an increasingly drastically rate. And a lot of them are even pulling out of the market, like you saw in California, like what happened in California. So there's some cost savings there. The company that I work for in Overland Park pays about $1.5 million in premium every year, and they have $50,000 to $80,000 in losses every year on average. And their insurance premium goes up by 10 or 15% a year. And that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's just kind of how the insurance market is right now. The cost control continues into the long run because you can capture those profits and you can capture the administrative costs that otherwise would be paid to an insurance company in the commissions, and you can compound those. So as you move forward through time with your own captive insurance company that's based only on your losses and no one else's, you can lower premium for yourself and your affiliated companies as you move through time. And rather than getting increases, you're able to decrease your premium and save money so that you can pass it on to your customers in whatever widget you might be selling. Flexible coverage is another thing in captives. There are captive companies out there that will actually invent new coverages. cybersecurity type coverages that you see now in insurance actually originated in captive insurance companies. It's a good place to test out what the true loss ratio will be for a new type of coverage when a real insurance company, real big monstrous insurance company is not wanting to take the risk. Captives can try these things, and then the major insurance companies can jump in and say, okay, this looks like it works. So I recently had the opportunity and the privilege of working alongside our insurance commissioner to open the very first property and casualty insurance company, captive insurance company in the state of Kansas. And the process was kind of clunky. We did this on purpose. The company that I work with or for, we could have opened our insurance company in Tennessee like everybody else or in Vermont, but we made a legitimate choice to do it in Kansas just to kind of see how the process went, see what we needed to improve to bring so that we could make our laws better and bring more of these premiums back home. We have several Kansas companies out there that currently own captives. Almost every major company in Kansas that is a really big company has a captive insurance company, and they are domiciled in another state or in the Turks and Caicos offshore somewhere. And Kansas receives no revenue from that. By making our captive insurance laws and regulations more friendly, we can bring that money back onshore or back in-state and benefit from the premium taxes. And then we can also benefit from the many jobs that are created in actuary, claims, and attorneys, and on and on. The provisions, the changes, I'm going to run through those just real quick so you see why we did them. The protected cell captives, that is, we used the Tennessee law for that. We copied that. That allows several small insurance companies, captive insurance companies, to kind of band together, be protected from each other so that if one of them doesn't work out, then it doesn't hurt the others. But it allows for cost savings so that you can have an actuary that looks at a whole, and then the lawyers and the accountants and all that can be, you can have some cost savings because you just divide it up amongst the cell captives. And that has been tremendously successful and has allowed a lot of smaller businesses to enter the captive insurance realm. And so that was an important thing. The surplus requirements on those are less because they're smaller companies. And then we expanded the coverage for controlled unaffiliated business. For some reason, we had a 5% limit in Kansas, but a lot of companies like franchises, for example, they're contractually bound together, and they could form their own captive insurance company, but not in the state of Kansas. We added the ability to self-insure for chunks of workers' compensation and medical stop-loss coverage. Then the number 5 there, provisional certificate of authority. That was important to do. Some of the other states allow for that. It is a long process to form a captive insurance, and in the state of Kansas, as we continue to learn the regulation process of setting one of these up, it takes some time. And this would allow the commissioner to go ahead and give you a provisional authority to do business while they form the captive with you. And keep in mind that should there be a mistake or not enough reserves, no one really gets hurt because this is self-insurance for a business. They can only hurt themselves. The application and renewal fee is currently $10,000 in the state of Kansas. Most states are $2,500 or less, and so we made that change to $2,500 as an application fee and as a renewal fee. And because the insurance commissioner has been so great at lowering fees constantly, we went ahead and made that change in the amendment to say up to $2,500 to give her some flexibility there, because she is very efficient and very good at lowering our fees. And then on number 8 there, when you have the captive exemptions, when you're a full-fledged insurance company doing business in many states, you've got to file all of your rates with all the states and your rating organizations and policy organizations. We had to do that as a captive in the state of Kansas, but that's not something that's required in any other state because it is private and it is a form of self-insurance. And so, in conclusion, this is a great opportunity to strengthen the captive insurance sector, attract new businesses, new valuable revenue to the state, and adopt the reforms Kansas can become more competitive, business-friendly jurisdiction for captives in all business. I can stand for questions. Online, I have as help Michael Corbett and Kevin Doherty. Michael Corbett works for Pinnacle, and Kevin Doherty works for Dickinson Wright. He's an attorney. They're both past presidents and board members of the Tennessee Captive Insurance Association. They both wrote the Tennessee captive insurance laws. They've made, I think, 3 or 4 versions of it over the last several years, and they pass unanimously in the state of Tennessee because they realize what captive insurance is. So I have them on here to help me answer captive questions in case anybody has tough ones.
Thank you, Representative Tarwater. Questions? Senator Rose, then Senator Clues.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Tarwater. What are all the different lines of insurance that this applies to? I've heard you talk about property casualty, health. What all does this apply to, the different lines?
Okay, thank you for the question. And you know, if the gentlemen online want to weigh in, but I can tell you that we have one captive insurance company in the life and health, and that is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we have one property and casualty company, and that is the one that I helped set up last year. And the lines of authority that we received were the ones we asked for, which are property and casualty, general liability only, no auto liability. And then anytime that we would want to expand on that, we would send in a request, a business change to the Department of Insurance. The regulators would have to look at it, look at our actuary tables, and give us an approval or a denial.
Senator Rose. Senator Clues.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony and that you are an expert in this area. This is definitely not my wheelhouse, but so if these are kind of generic, my apology, but so is there a certain size that a company has to be or a volume dollar-wise to start being self-insured?
Typically, you want to, it makes sense if you're at $1 million or premium or more. With the smaller cell captives, you know, $400,000 or $500,000 would work because you need the economies of scale there, and in order to offset your losses, I mean, you can have pretty big losses. You need to have actuarial sound number, the premium that goes in, and then the surplus that stacks on top of it. And so if you can't afford to have the premium that you normally pay, which in our case was $1.5 million, and then add another $500,000 on there or so, whatever the insurance commissioner deems relevant as the proper amount of surplus. If you don't have that kind of money, then you can't do it.
Okay. Madam Chair, one follow-up. Oh, yeah, okay. And then, so is it typical that a company may, and if this is even possible, so a company could be self-insured to a certain cap, and then like for extremes, can they have insurance once you reach a certain cap?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, because that is one of the advantages that I didn't list as for having a captive insurance company. It gives you access to the reinsurance markets, and when a company is willing to take, say, the first $1 million of claims on its own, they have access to reinsurance companies that will buy levels of higher coverage, and it's much less expensive to do it that way. In our case, we are currently looking at making a deal with the reinsurance company on the liability, because our liability limits are $5 million right now, and that would be a big loss. We're willing to accept the risk, and we are properly funded for it. However, with some of these recent lawsuits that hand down multi-million-dollar claims for very small claims, it might be worth it for us to purchase reinsurance for that extra $3 or $4 million that we aren't comfortable with.
Representative Tarwater, this is Michael Corbett. Can I jump in here?
Madam Chair.
Quickly, because I have other senators have questions. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Can I share my screen for a quick minute? I'll do it very fast, I promise.
Okay, quick minute.
Thank you, ma'am.
We see you.
I'm working on it. Sorry. And sharing now. There we go. Let's talk a little bit about how captive insurance works real quickly, okay? Everything you need to know about insurance is right here. How frequently does the loss occur and how severe is the loss? This is what we all deal with every day. As the former regulator for the state of Tennessee, I've licensed over 700 of these companies. I urge you to seriously consider this. It's a great opportunity for your state. But all of us, personally and corporately, we all are self-insured up to some level. I love to tease audiences from time to time and ask them, are you personally self-insured? And most of the people, including insurance brokers, say, no, I'm not self-insured. And then the next slide shows, well, I ask, what do you do when your toaster breaks? What do? We go out and buy a new one. You're self-insured. We all are self-insured. But what happens in this world that we're in, at some point, you've got to go to the traditional insurance markets. We all do, whether it's for car insurance or home insurance or corporate D&O or property and casualty. And we start to see companies that we're familiar with starting to insure risks like property and liability that we're familiar with. But at a certain point, you can't get insurance and you've got to go to the custom market, represented by companies like Lloyd's of London and other names you might be familiar with, insuring risks like football player concussions. Whether you're a high school, college, or the pros, you cannot get that in the commercial insurance market. I would argue that Bruce Springsteen probably really doesn't have a voice, but his is insured by Lloyd's. Above that, you're going to have no coverage. And there's usually some smart person in the audience that says, well, what about terrorism and flood insurance? Well, if it is subsidized by the federal government, you can get that insurance as well. So the picture I'm trying to draw here is, where do captives land? And they land right about there. They're on the upper end of self-insurance, the lower end of the traditional markets. It provides a great breakthrough from self-insured to insurance markets. Broadly speaking, what we're doing here is, this is what most companies deal with right now. The traditional market and the deductible, and the captive insurance company really layers in on top of it. Sorry for taking so much time, but I did want to share that. I thought it might help.
Thank you. That's a great visual representation. So Senator Cluche, you had another question. I've got Senator Warren and Senator Argabright.
Yeah, I think.
And Senator Gossage.
I think, Madam Chair, you may have addressed it. I'd like to get a copy of that slide if we can. Specifically, so will this bill or this current law, excuse me for my not understanding this yet. So will this allow, or will it force the other insurance companies, like he talked about on the slide, the specialty companies? I'm just trying to make sure that we have a way that they can access that. In other words, would they steer away, like if you're self-insuring, and then would companies say, well, you know what, we're not going to do that, so they can tighten the market for their end? Does that make sense? Or do they have to be open to give that insurance out?
Madam Chair.
Representative Tarwater, please.
Okay. So, yeah, you actually get access to more markets by taking a larger risk, because a lot of insurance carriers don't want to deal with the smaller onesie-twosie claims, and they'll mirror your coverage going forward. But I can tell you this. We currently have the statutes on the books. The problem is no companies are using it in the state of Kansas. Anyone in the state of Kansas can have a captive, and that is not an issue. The problem is that they're domiciling them in other states that are more friendly, and then we're not receiving any revenue from it.
Thank you. Senator Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep this quick. Thanks, Representative, for coming over. Looking at the bigger picture, and we don't have any of these proposed sell captive companies as proponents of the bill. We don't have any of the large insurance companies as proponents of the bill, Blue Cross, Blue Shield. We don't have the Commissioner of Insurance as a proponent of the bill. So we don't even have the name of the company you work for who's proposing this. So I guess who's proposing this, and why aren't they here helping support the bill? The others, so maybe there just wasn't time, but I would have liked to see more industry buy-in to this, this new act. I guess it's currently you can be a captive sell, but this would be kind of new law here for it. But so to the first question, who's the company that you work for in the name of transparency, and where are the others?
Yes, Representative, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So there's a lot to unpack there, Senator. I am bringing this bill as a state representative that sees an opportunity to change laws to bring this market back to the state of Kansas. The company I work for is Midwest Trust, and they have set up the first captive purposely and expensively, so that because they're big supporters, as you know, I think you're familiar with that company. They're big supporters of the state of Kansas. They went out of their way to set this up in the state of Kansas. I could have set it up in Oklahoma in a day. I could have set it up in Tennessee. I could have set it up in Vermont. But they made the active choice to do it here so that we could learn the process and bring, like, for example, the Koch Industries. They own captives. They're not here. They're in the state of Georgia. It'd be nice to bring that premium back to the state of Kansas. So this is me bringing it. It's no company. There are some written testimony in there as well. There's a couple other people that have written testimony.
Sure, and I appreciate the effort to make Kansas a more business-friendly, easier place to do business type of state, so I appreciate that definitely. And, you know, you said it would only hurt themselves. Well, if they don't have enough because they've lowered premiums and then they don't have enough to cover the big risk, well, wouldn't that hurt the person who's making the claim against the insurance too? So my question is, would these companies be required to have reinsurance insurance?
Thank you for the question. And yes, if the insurance commissioner, you can do it either two ways. You can make sure that you have the adequate amount of premium and the adequate amount of surplus according to the actuarials that say this is worst case scenario.
So that's the company self-determining where we should be.
It is an actuary company. You have to have an actuary company. Actually, it's a real insurance company regulated by the commissioner. So the commissioner gets to make that decision. And yes, most of the time, the commissioner will say, okay, you can sustain up to here. After that, you've got to buy reinsurance. And then they'll approve the company once they're comfortable with it.
And subject to review once every 5 years, unless the commissioner makes some other inquiry before the 5 years. Because it was amended from 3-year required review to 5 in the House, I think.
Right. Well, the statute that we proposed, the statute change we proposed had that in there.
3, and then it was up, and now it's 5 in the bill. So, okay. Thanks for the questions. It's, you know, a new area to be looking at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We only have a couple minutes, and I have Senator Argabright. Senator Gossage, did you have a question? Okay, so, and then, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question on it was a form of self-insurance, and I think the visual and Senator Clues kind of helped explain that. I appreciate that. This is an intriguing bill to me. It was overwhelmingly supported. There was 10 that opposed it. Can you give us just a more thorough understanding of the opposition and the why?
So,
Representative Tarwater, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. Senator, thank you. Yes, there were 110 votes in the House and 10 against, and I have not reached out to the 10 that voted against because the vote was overwhelming. And normally, like in the state of Tennessee or Vermont, when they make a statute change, it's unanimous because they get it. And I understand that most people in this room don't know what captive insurance is, and I didn't really until I started in it a couple of years ago.
Senator Gossage. Did you have a question?
Madam Chair, I have so many questions. So I tell you what I'll do is that, and there are lots of insurance technical
We can,
questions.
you
So
know,
I will
on-
just, I can just meet with
can.
Representative Tarwater separately.
Or we can have another, hearing opportunity before, we can no longer meet. Would that be helpful? I mean, I'm not going to discourage you from
No,
talking
I'm
to.
just thinking it might be better if I meet with some of those people online, because I know lots of stop-loss companies and trying to find out how is this different.
Okay.
And I think that my time would be better used doing that than if we do come back together. I will have a much better understanding.
Senator Fagg, did you have something you wanted to say? And then Senator Francisco, and then we're going to have to adjourn. Gotta leave the
Let me
room.
yield to Senator Francisco, and I'll work with Representative Tyler.
This should be quick. I just wanted to say I've been a legislative representative to the Midwest Higher Education Compact, and they formed a captive. And because of that, we got about 4 hours of explanation before we voted, but appreciate very much your work to do this.
Senator Haley, quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will probably touch base with Representative Tarwater and also with Ms. Mall. Why there's a cause of action, I see in the sub-note, the fiscal note, that there could be enhanced causes of action if these cases were implemented in district court. I'm just curious as to why that might be, but I will touch base later and find out why establishing these are going to increase so many causes of action. Thank you,
want
Madam
to
Chair.
respond to that before we adjourn?
Later.
Is your microphone on? I'm sorry.
It is.
Okay. About an increased cause of action?
Of actions in district court, that it would certainly do that according to the sub-note, the fiscal note that was provided.
I'm not familiar with that unless one of the online guys can answer that question. I know we don't have any time, but.
Actually, just to say one word on that, Representative Tarwater, if I may. Litigation and claims litigation, that type of thing is actually extremely rare with captive insurance companies because there's not a third party involved. This is not insurance for the public, it's insurance for businesses. So essentially, if they were going to sue on a claim, they're suing themselves. So you don't see it. It's very rare.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
Thank you.
could we ask, could
Thank
you
you
identify
very much.
who we heard from?
That was
Would you-
Kevin
I
Doherty.
apologize.
Kevin Doherty.
We'll get more information to the committee.
We
on
have some email
Madam Chair.
information we're going to send out to the committee that has their names and contact information. We probably need to think about having another hearing on this because it is so new and we need to be educated. So committee, thank you. We will meet tomorrow. We'll have hearings and work bills. So thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Tarwater. Thanks to all those who are online. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lots of information.